let's review a few points that we made so far about the way the Mizbeach is constructed, going from the low level to the next level to the highest level. And we start with Yisod, and we said that the Yisod will surround the base of the Mizbeach on 3 out of 4 sides, with the exception of that Ritzua, that section from Yehuda that enters into Binyamin, and that's called Mizrachis Dromis. We said that the Yisod functioned in terms of Shvichas Shirayim, that's where they put the vestige of the Dam. And we pointed out that the Yisod, the base of the Mizbech, is the largest and widest of all the sections. So as we go up, like a pyramid, it gets narrower and narrower. And we said that the Yisod HaMizbech is 32 amos square, and Ribua is critical. Then we go up to the next level, which is called the Sovev, and the Sovev is only 30 amos. So the Blita, the extension of the Yisod vis-a-vis the Sovev, is 2 amos. And the Sovev was there to function in order to facilitate this Rikas Hadam, either above the Chut HaSikra or below the Chut HaSikra, depending on which carbon you have. So the Chut HaSikra, if you remember, was the line that splits the Mizbeach in half. There's Lamala and Lamata. All karbonos have Zrika Lamata, with the exceptions of 2 karbonos. And they are the Chatos, Behema, and the Olas Ha'of. In those 2 cases, the Zrika has to reach the higher part of the Mizbeach above the Chut HaSikra. So the Kohen would go around the Sovev, and that would give him access to both the upper part and the lower part of the Mizbeach. And that was, as we said, 30 amma square. Everything is Ribua, square. Then we go to the top of the Mizbeach, the highest level, and that's going to be the Gag HaMizbeach. And the Gag HaMizbeach is 28 amma square. Also Ribua, the third Ribua, but here it's 28 amma. So we started with 32, we went down to 30, and now we're going down to 28. Every time that we go up higher, we subtract another 2 amos square. Now, in terms of the height of the Gag HaMizbeach, we're going to say the following. It's going to be 5 tfachim plus 3 tfachim plus 1 tefach. 5, 3, which is 8, and 1 is 9. And how do we divide that up? So it works in the following way. The Gag HaMizbeach, which is the third Ribua as we go up, is 28 amos by 28 amos. Okay, then? Now, we'll get back to the height of the Gag HaMizbeach in just a moment, but first, there were 4 things that went on the Gag HaMizbeach. Number 1, there were chronos on all 4 sides. And there's a machlokas between the Rambam and the Ravid we'll get to in a minute about the chronos HaMizbeach, exactly where they were situated. But the Rambam says they were on all 4 extreme angles, 90-degree angles on all 4 corners. And there was a special din of hazah on the chronos HaMizbeach with regard to the chatos. We said before that the chatos, behema, and the olas ha'of were above the chut hasikra, but there's a fundamental difference between the olas ha'of, which is on the top half of the kira mizbeach, above the chut hasikra, whereas the chatos, there the dam is going to be applied to the chronos hamizbeach, which are on the 4 corners on top. What else was on the Gag HaMizbeach? There was a makom hiluch hakohanim. It was a place for the kohanim to move around. Number 3, there was a place for the burning of the emurim, The marachos, that was on top of the mizbeach and the gag. We're going to soon learn that there's a maracha gedola and a maracha ketana. And finally, there's something called a tapua, a round curvature, and we'll see exactly what that function. Now, here's the machlokus between the Rambam and the Ravid about the Kronos HaMizbeach. According to the Rambam, on each one of the four corners of the Gag HaMizbeach, there was a keren, one keren on each corner, and each keren in length and width was 1 amma by 1 amma. How tall were the Kronos? They were 5 tfachim. Where is the machlokus between the Rambam and the Ravid? That's in terms of the location, the exact location to pinpoint the location of the Kronos. The Rambam holds that each one of the Kronos, each keren, was on the furthest part of the outside the angle of the mizbeach. The Ravid holds that no, the Kronos were not exactly at the edge of the Gag HaMizbeach. They came close to the edge, but there were 2 amos of a distance between the kotzer, the end of the Gag HaMizbeach, and the Kronos. Each keren was already moved in 2 amos. So within this area of 28 square amos, the Kronos, which we said were amal amma, so already, according to the Ravid, we're when we get to the outer, well, it depends on from your perspective, but you're already at 3 amos. What do I mean? You've got 2 amos at the kotze, and then you're marchik that, according to the Ravid, until you set up the keren, which is another amma. So you already have 3 amos on each one of the corners. You've, to some extent, according to the Ravid, restricted the area which functions in so many different ways, with the tapuach and the marachos and the derech hakohanim, that becomes mitzumtzam. That's already contracted. Yesh mi shesover b'gemara sherak hakronos atzman huchshu mazos dam hachatos. He only hints to a sugya in Zvachim Daf Nun Gimel, and he only presents one opinion. So you don't know, unless you go through the sugya there, what the other opinion is. But according to that opinion that he mentions here, the hazas dam achatos, we're talking about chatos behema, has to be done on the Kronos themselves. Okay, now he goes into a whole discussion about the Gag HaMizbeach between the Kronos as we go in towards the middle. But I just wanted to get back to the height of the Gag HaMizbeach. We said that the Kronos were 5 tfachim high. Oh, he says the following: Gag HaMizbeach hoya esrin v'shmona amma al esrin v'shmona amma begova shalosh amos. Again, we have. Just 1 second. I'm just trying to work this out here. We have the height of the sovev, which is 30 and 30 amma in width and length, is 5 amos. Then we get to the Gag HaMizbeach, which was again 28 by 28, and had a height of 3 amos. Oh, very good. Now, if you're at the base on the ground level, which is called the Yisod, that reaches a height of 1 amma. So right now, we want to understand what's the entire height of the Mizbeach from ground till the top. So we've got 1 amma for the Yisod. We've got 3 amos. I'm sorry. We have 5 amos. Let me get it right. 5 amos for the Sovev and 3 amos for the Gag HaMizbeach. So that's 1 and 5 is 6, and then 3 amos for the Gag is 9. Now we're going to add 1 amma to round it off into number 10 because of the chronos themselves. Each keren was 1 amma by 1 amma by 1 amma, meaning the gova was 1 amma. So from the ground all the way to the top of the chronos was 10 ammas. Okay. Okay, what's between the chronos on the Gag HaMizbeach? Number 1, he says that Rochav Ama Chitzonis Shebegag HaMizbeach Shahoisa Bein HaKronos. So I guess he's talking about the width of each one of the chronos, which we said was 1 amma. So let's go with the Rambam Shita for the time being. So you have 1 amma subtracted on each of 4 sides. And now you have Makom Hilucho Shel HaKohanim. Okay, how much of an area do we need for the Kohanim? We got to give them space to walk around the Gag HaMizbeach. How much space do we give them? 1 amma. So in other words, we have here at this point 3 amos on each one of the 4 sides. Why? Because the chronos each keren was 1 amma in width. Then we add another amma, and then we add the makom hilucho shel hakohanim. Now, what happened in that 1 amma between the keren and the makom hilucho shel hakohanim, such that we're up to 3 amos? He says, based on the Rambam, Shayu Nosnim Sham Berashei Chadashim es Evrei Hamusafim. They would hang up the Avarim before they burnt them of the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh in that area of 1 extra Am. Why did they do so? Kidei lefarsing Jehu Rosh Chodesh. And Sham Hayu Molchim also. So there's halacha here of Pirsum. Very interesting. If you ask me, okay, you didn't ask me, but I'll just offer it. The Pirsum here is to establish Rosh Chodesh. The Torah says, HaChodesh Zelochem Rosh Chodesh. Now, how do we establish the sanctity of Rosh Chodesh? How do we generate that Kiddush Hayom to sanctify the day of Rosh Chodesh? It's with the Karban Musaf. But we need all of Klal Yisrael to be involved. We don't have that today because we don't have the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. But what we do have is the Hachraza, that the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh, we announce in all the shuls and Chaverim Kol Yisrael that so in this following day is going to be, the day in the following week is going to be Rosh Chodesh. At the time of the Mikdash, the way that they publicized Rosh Chodesh, in order to get a sanctification of Rosh Chodesh on the part of the entire community of Israel, was in that Amma where they would publicize the Karban Musaf by hanging it up so that anybody could see it. Now, the Makom Hiluch HaKohanim we said was 1 Amma wide, Milvad HaAmma Shebein HaKronos, V'hainu b'shtei Amos HaChitzonios Shel Gag HaMizbeach. So we have 2 Amos on the 4 corners, plus an Amma for the Hiluch Kohen. Now, we're left with the Maracha on the Gag HaMizbeach. That's where the fire burns. And the Maracha was located in the middle of the Gag HaMizbeach. Shtei Amos Mikol Tzad. Okay, then, so we have now a maracha in the middle of the Mizbeach that spreads out on each one of the four sides 2 amos. And then again, we're going to get to the tapuach later on. Now, we have the fire that's burning, but again, we have to anticipate what's coming around the bend here. We're going to have a maracha gedol and a maracha ketana, and again, we're going to have that area for the maracha, which is 1 amma, 2 amos in each direction, and therefore he says that orach v'rochav shel makom maracha. Now again, keep in mind the gag hamizbech is how wide? What's the magic number? 28 amos. But we've already subtracted 4 amos because of the number 1, the keren. Number 2, the amma to the right of the keren if you're on the left side. And then we have the makom hiluch hakon. So therefore, what's left of the gag for the maracha, gedola and ketana? 24 amos on 24 amos. Now, the question is, what's the size of an amma? The Rambam Shita at the beginning of Hilchos Beis HaBechira is that we're dealing with tfachim. Okay, right? Amma is made up of tfachim. He says 24 amos bas shisha tfachim. So we're going to multiply 24 by 6 to get the size of the area in tfachim. The od arba tfachim. And Rambam Shita is that we have to add another 4 tfachim. So let's see if we do a quick calculation in tfachim. So let's see. We have here 6 times 24. It's 148 tfachim. Okay, that's in tfachim. But basically, it is equivalent to 24 amos plus 4 tfachim. Now, Rashi has a different shita. He wants to add to the 24 amos of 6 tfachim another 2 tfachim. Okay, now we want to talk about the difference between maracha gedola and maracha ketana, otherwise known as maracha shniya. So maracha gedola, that's the primary fire on the mizbeach, and it was on the southern side of the mizbeach. So if you're coming in from the east, you turn left, and that was keneged chatzi hamizrachi shel hakevesh. So the kevesh is going to be to the left of the right side of the eastern side of the mizbeach, and the half of the kevesh on the east will border on this maracha gedola, which is on the east. Now, how did they organize the fire? First, they took gizrei eitzim. Okay, they took logs, and the logs themselves were organized biribua as, 4 logs on 4 sides, exactly the same size. And chozin umaynichim shnei gizrei eitzim echel letzafon v'echel ledaron. So they placed 2 of these piles of eitzim. Okay, we know that they were organized in squares. One was on the north, and the other was on the south. Al ribua zeh od ribuira keseder hazeh, v'chein ribua al gabi ribua. So they would put one square on top of the other, building like a little bit of a tower, from these eights. He doesn't tell you how tall it had to be. Does he tell you that? No. Okay. Now there's another requirement here that the outer part of the Gizrei Eitzim that were inside, meaning on the lower part of the Gizrei Eitzim, again, we piled up one on top of the other, so you go to the lower part. Then the Rashi Gizrei Eitzim, those that are on the outside, hayu nogim b'tapuach. They had to have direct contact with the tapuach. Okay? And tapuach, we said, we'll learn about more later, but it had to do with a large amount of afer of the ashes that resulted from the burning of the murim. For revach haya bein hagzirim, there had to be some sort of space between each one of these squares of logs. Shemishama yametzisim al yidei eish al yidei eitzim dakim shoyimachnisim b'fnim. So what they did was they had smaller twigs which they put in between each layer of Gizrei Eitzim, and that's what they used to light up the Gizrei Eitzim. And what did they do with this fire? Number one, Hayimaktirim es ha'evarim. And in the case of a carbanola, which is kulo kolil, it's all of the animal. And then on these fires, they would burn chalavim, right, the fats, and the murim of all the karbonos. Then we have, and with this we'll conclude for today, the Maracha Shniya. Okay, this was not on the south side, but rather on the west side. So the west side means as you move forward, because you enter into the Mikdash from the east. Moshuch min hakeren klape tzfon safon arba amos. In other words, you have the Kronos on the western side, and now you allow yourself 4 amos of distance from the Kronos to set up, again, all on the northern side, to set up the Maracha Shniya. What was the purpose of a second fire? Maracha zu asuya b'chtei lito mimena gechol mizbech hapnimi laktoras haktoris. Now it's really interesting. The Ktoris was burnt on which Mizbeach? On the Mizbeach HaPnimi in the Heichal. But where was the fire taken from? The Gecholim, in order to burn the Ktoris. It was taken from the Mizbeach HaChitzon. And from where in the Mizbeach HaChitzon? From the Maracha Shniya. Shabbos hoyimaktirim al Maracha zu shnei beziche chelbeno shalechem aponim. You may remember, we discussed this in Tamin Nishchat, that accompanying the lechem aponim were 2 bezichim's worth of levona that had to be burnt on the mizbech. Where on the mizbech did they burn the levona? Not in the same place where they burnt the zvachim, the animals and so forth, the emurim, but rather in a separate place which is called Maracha Shniya, on the northern side of the Gag HaMizbeach. That's where they would burn the parts of the, I should say not parts of, but the accompaniment to the Lechem Aponim, which is the Shnei Bezichim of Levon. So let's just make a note of where we get up to here. It's number Yudalid, Maracha Shlishis, and then finally we'll get to the Tapua.